She never expected a single question to shake her heart the way it did. Yet that night, standing in the quiet hallway with the moonlight pressing against the windows, she heard it so clearly that her breath caught before she even answered. It all began on a calm evening when Serafina returned to her cousin's home after a long day of work. She had been staying with them for a few weeks, helping around the house while her cousin recovered from an illness. Everything felt routine, predictable, even comforting. But life has a way of surprising a person in the moments they least expect. Serafina stepped inside, placing her bag gently on the small wooden table near the door. The house was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. She could hear distant laughter from neighborhood children playing outside, their voices fading slowly as dusk melted into night. She walked toward the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water, feeling the familiar quiet wrap around her. That stillness usually calmed her, but tonight it carried a strange weight, as if something lingered in the air, waiting to reveal itself. She didn't notice Elias at first. He was her cousin's son, a thoughtful boy with eyes that always seemed to study the world carefully. He was much younger than her, still navigating life with the softness of someone who hadn't yet been bruised by it. He stood silently near the doorframe, watching Serafina, as if he had been waiting for her. Serafina smiled gently, setting down the glass. "You startled me," she said softly, wiping her hands on a towel. "Why are you awake? It's quite late." Elias shifted his weight, his expression uncertain. "I needed to ask you something," he whispered. Something in his tone made her straighten. It wasn't fear, but there was a tenderness in it, a hesitation she had never heard from him before. She approached him slowly, her heart tightening despite not knowing why. "All right," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "Tell me." Elias looked down at his hands, then up at her again, as if gathering courage. "Aunt Sarah, why do people leave, even when they say they care?" The question hit harder than she expected. She felt the air thicken around her. Memories she had tucked away began to stir. Moments when she had waited for someone who never returned. Promises that had withered. Quiet heartbreaks she had hidden behind steady smiles. Elias wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was asking out of pain. Serafina knelt beside him so their eyes were level. "What happened?" she asked gently. He swallowed, blinking quickly. "Mother said father might not come back for a long time. She tried not to cry, but I saw it. And now I don't know what to think." Serafina felt her breath tremble. She wanted to speak, but the right words didn't come immediately. This wasn't something she could answer with simple reassurance. It required honesty, kindness, strength, even when her own heart carried its own quiet scars. She placed a hand over his. "Sometimes adults get lost," she murmured, "not in the way we get lost in a park or on a road, but inside themselves. They pull away because they're trying to figure out how to be better, but that doesn't mean they don't care." Elias looked at her intently, as if measuring every syllable. She continued softly, "And sometimes it's not about caring at all. It's just life taking people in different directions, but none of that is your fault." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house remained still, the kind of silence that carries unspoken truths in its breath. Serafina felt a warmth rise behind her eyes, but she kept it steady for his sake. Elias leaned slightly closer. "So, people can come back?" Her heart ached, but she smiled gently. "Yes," she whispered, "people can come back." He nodded slowly, seeming to absorb the thought. His breathing steadied. Serafina brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead with the tenderness of someone trying to shield him from a storm she knew too well. Near the end of their quiet moment, she said softly, "If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales." But even as those words faded, she felt a new tension inside her, a feeling that the night wasn't quite done revealing its truths. Because just as she rose to her feet, she heard footsteps behind her, footsteps she didn't expect at all. Serafina turned slowly, her heartbeat picking up as the soft footsteps drew closer. For a moment, she wondered if her cousin had woken up, but the rhythm was different, lighter, yet hesitant, almost as if the person wasn't sure they should be there. When she saw who it was, her breath caught. Standing in the doorway was Rowan. She hadn't seen him in several days. He had returned to town to help the family during her cousin's illness, but their paths had barely crossed. Every time he entered a room, she felt something shift inside her, something she kept carefully hidden, even from herself. Tonight, though, he looked unusually tired. His shoulders were slightly slumped, and the faint glow from the hallway cast a gentle shadow beneath his eyes. But what startled her most was not his appearance. It was the softness in his expression when he looked at her. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said quietly. Serafina steadied herself. "You didn't. Elias was just asking me something." Rowan nodded, glancing toward the boy, who now lingered close to Serafina, his small fingers curling around the hem of her sleeve. Rowan lowered himself slightly, so he was not towering over the child. "Everything all right, Elias?" he asked gently. Elias hesitated, then gave a small nod, though his eyes flicked toward Serafina, as if seeking reassurance. She offered him a faint, warm smile, and Rowan noticed. Something unspoken passed between the two adults, a soft recognition of how she had comforted the boy only moments before. Rowan straightened again, his expression thoughtful. "I heard voices," he said. "Just wanted to make sure everything was okay." Serafina sensed there was more behind his words, something he wasn't voicing. Before she could respond, Elias tugged lightly at her hand. "Aunt Sarah," he whispered, "can you stay until I fall asleep?" She nodded without hesitation. "Of course." Rowan stepped aside so they could walk toward the corridor leading to the bedrooms. The moment Serafina brushed past him, she felt his presence like a quiet pull, warm, steady, and far too familiar for her comfort. She tried not to let it show. Elias settled on his bed quickly, exhaustion finally nudging him into stillness. Serafina sat beside him, humming a tune she remembered from her own childhood, a melody her mother used to use whenever fear crept into her young heart. Elias relaxed, his breathing growing even. Soon, his eyes drifted shut. When she was sure he was asleep, Serafina rose gently. As she stepped into the hallway, she nearly collided with Rowan, who had been waiting just outside the door. "Sorry," she whispered, startled. "No need to apologize," Rowan murmured, stepping back just enough to give her space, but still close enough to feel the quiet intensity between them. "I wanted to talk to you." Serafina tensed slightly. "About Elias?" "Yes, but not only that." She exhaled slowly, bracing herself. Rowan had always been calm, steady in a way that soothed people around him. But tonight there was something else lingering in his voice, something that felt like a confession waiting to break free. They walked toward the living room, where the small lamp still glowed softly. When they reached it, Rowan remained standing, his hands loosely clasped in front of him. "He cares for you a great deal," Rowan said quietly. "He feels safe with you." Serafina looked down. "I only did what anyone would do." "Not everyone," Rowan replied. The sincerity in his tone made her chest tighten. She didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to praise, much less from him, not when she still tried so hard to hide what she felt whenever he was near. Rowan studied her gently. "There's something else," he said. "Something I think you should know." Serafina lifted her gaze, searching his face. "What is it?" Rowan hesitated. For the first time in a long while, he looked unsure, almost vulnerable. His next words felt as though they were caught on the edge of something important, something that could change the fragile calm of the night. Serafina, I need to tell you why Elias asked that question tonight. Her heartbeat quickened. Rowan took a slow breath, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just about his father. Serafina felt the air shift around her, carrying a tension she wasn't prepared for. And Rowan's expression told her the truth he was about to reveal might shake far more than she expected. Rowan's words lingered in the air, fragile and heavy at the same time. Serafina felt her breath catch, unsure whether to brace herself or simply let the truth land however it wished. She folded her arms loosely, not out of defensiveness, but to steady the quiet tremor in her chest. "What do you mean it wasn't just about his father?" she asked softly. Rowan looked down for a moment, running a hand through his hair, as if arranging his thoughts. The lamplight revealed a quiet sadness there, one she hadn't seen before. "When Elias asked why people leave," Rowan said slowly, "he wasn't only thinking about his father. He was thinking about the night before, when he overheard something." Serafina blinked, startled. Overheard what? Rowan hesitated, choosing his next words with care. "He heard you and your mother talking on the phone. He heard you say you might not stay here for much longer." Serafina's heart fell. "I didn't mean for him to hear that. I wasn't even serious, just overwhelmed." "I know," Rowan replied gently. "But to him, you leaving feels like the world shifting again. You're the one steady thing he has right now." Serafina closed her eyes for a moment, guilt washing through her. She had never imagined her own restless thoughts might ripple into the heart of someone that young, someone already hurting. "I should talk to him in the morning," she whispered. "You should," Rowan agreed softly. "But that isn't the only reason I came to you tonight." She felt a quiet shiver run through her. Rowan stepped closer, not too close, but enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence pulling against her uncertainty. "There's something I've noticed," he continued. "Something about the way you carry everything for this family. You step in quietly, help without asking for anything, hold people together even when you feel like falling apart." Serafina swallowed hard, caught off guard. "I don't do anything special." "You do," Rowan said, his voice firm but gentle. "More than you realize." She turned her face away, suddenly feeling exposed. She wasn't used to anyone seeing her so clearly. And Rowan, of all people, noticing her unspoken struggles, made her heart twist in a way she wasn't prepared for. "Serafina," Rowan said softly, "the reason Elias asked that question, the reason it hurt him so much, is because he feels something strong for you, a kind of attachment he hasn't felt since his father left." She opened her eyes, her voice trembling. "And you think I'll break that?" "No," Rowan said quickly. "I think you're afraid you might." His honesty landed heavily. Serafina stared at him, stunned by how accurately he had read her. She wasn't afraid of responsibility. She carried it every day. What scared her was the idea of becoming someone's anchor when she didn't always know how to steady herself. She lowered herself onto the couch, needing a moment to breathe. Rowan walked over and sat a short distance away, leaving space between them, but not enough to feel distant. "I'm not planning to leave," she said softly, mostly to herself. "I just don't want to become a burden." Rowan shook his head gently. "You could never be a burden." His words were simple, but they carried a warmth that wrapped around her in a way she couldn't quite explain. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It fluttered with all the things neither of them knew how to say, all the unspoken emotions slowly rising like tidewater at night. Finally, Rowan looked directly at her, something earnest and fragile flickering in his eyes. "Serafina," he whispered, "there's a reason I'm telling you all of this. There's something you deserve to know." She felt herself draw in a slow breath. "What is it?" Rowan paused, his voice caught on the edge of something deeper, something he seemed almost afraid to release. "It's about why I came back here, and why I stayed longer than I planned." Serafina felt her pulse quicken. Rowan's next words trembled at the edge of revelation, threatening to shift everything she thought she understood about him, and maybe about herself, too. Rowan's silence stretched between them, soft yet trembling with meaning. Serafina waited, her hands folded in her lap, feeling the quiet thrum of her heartbeat as if it echoed through the dim room. When he finally spoke, his voice held a tenderness she hadn't expected. "I came back for family," Rowan began, "but I stayed because something changed when you arrived." Serafina's breath caught. She looked at him, searching his expression for clarity, for reassurance that she wasn't misunderstanding his words. But Rowan didn't look away. His gaze was steady, warm, and almost unbearably sincere. He continued softly, "You walked in with your calm presence, with the way you cared for everyone without hesitation, and suddenly the house felt lighter. Elias felt safer. Even your cousins seemed more at ease. And somehow, I did too." She swallowed, her chest tightening. "Rowan, you don't have to say anything just to comfort me." "I'm not saying it to comfort you," he replied quietly. "I'm saying it because I should have said it earlier." The gentle firmness in his tone made her pulse race. Still, uncertainty crept in. "But why tell me now?" she whispered. Rowan leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "Because tonight, watching you with Elias, I realized something. He's not the only one afraid you might leave." Serafina's eyes widened, the soft tremor inside her blooming into something warmer, deeper, and far more fragile. "I don't understand," she murmured. "You do," Rowan said gently. "You just don't want to believe it." She tried to look away, but he continued before she could escape the moment. "You're always taking care of everyone," he said, "but who takes care of you, Serafina?" The question pierced through her carefully built composure. She hadn't expected him to see her so clearly. She hadn't expected anyone to. Her voice shook as she answered, "I don't need anyone to take care of me." Rowan tilted his head slightly. "That's not true." She opened her mouth to respond, but stopped, unable to deny the truth he had laid bare. All her life she had carried her worries quietly, like whispered burdens held beneath steady smiles. She didn't know how to let anyone in. Rowan's voice softened further. "You deserve someone who sees your heart, who knows when you're struggling, even if you never say a word. Someone who wants to stay, not out of obligation, but out of choice." Her eyes grew glassy, but she blinked quickly, trying to steady herself. "Rowan, why are you telling me this?" He hesitated, breathing slowly as though steadying his courage. "Because the more time I spend here," he said, "the more I realize how much your presence feels like home." Serafina felt her breath shudder. The word home carried a weight she hadn't been prepared to hear from him. The room felt suddenly smaller, warmer, as if their unspoken emotions had shifted the air around them. Serafina tried to respond, but her voice refused to form the words. "Rowan," she whispered, barely audible. He leaned back slightly, giving her space. "I don't want to pressure you," he said gently, "and I know this isn't the right moment to ask for anything, especially with Elias hurting right now, but I need you to understand one thing. Serafina looked up, her eyes meeting his, her heart caught somewhere between hope and fear. Rowan's next words came slowly, almost reverently. If you leave because you think you're burdening anyone, you're wrong. You're the reason this house feels steady again. And if you stay, it wouldn't be out of obligation. It would be because you're wanted here. She felt the warmth of his words settle deep inside her, comforting yet overwhelming. Before she could respond, a soft creak sounded from the hallway. Both she and Rowan turned their heads. The house was quiet, but the faint sound had definitely come from near Elias's room. And Serafina felt a sudden pull in her chest, unsure whether it was concern or the feeling that the night was far from finished revealing its truths. Serafina rose from the couch, her pulse quickening as the soft creak echoed again. Rowan stood up beside her, instinctively attentive, though neither of them spoke. The quiet of the house deepened around them, broken only by the distant hum of the night breeze brushing against the windows. They walked down the hallway together, their footsteps gentle. When they reached Elias's door, Serafina pushed it open slowly. Elias was sitting up in bed, clutching his blanket with both hands. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with uncertainty, the kind that comes when a child feels caught between emotions too big for him to hold. Serafina hurried to his side. "Elias," she whispered, "why are you awake? Did you hear something?" He looked down, avoiding her gaze. "I heard voices," he murmured. "I thought maybe you were talking about leaving again." Her heart softened instantly. She sat beside him, brushing a gentle hand over his shoulder. "No," she said firmly. "We were talking, yes, but not about leaving, not about anything that should worry you." Elias blinked up at her, his voice fragile. "But I heard Rowan say something about you being gone before." Serafina felt Rowan step forward behind her, his voice warm and steady. "That was my mistake," he said. "I should have explained better. I wasn't talking about right now. I was talking about how worried I was before we talked to each other." Elias frowned slightly, processing. "So you're not going anywhere?" Serafina's answer came swiftly, from the deepest place inside her heart. "No," she said softly, "I'm not going anywhere, not unless your mother sends me away herself, which I hope she never does." Elias finally released a long breath, one that felt like a knot loosening. "Can you stay here a little longer tonight?" he asked. Serafina nodded. "I'll stay until you fall asleep." Elias lay back down, his expression calmer now. She hummed the same quiet melody as before, smoothing the rhythm of his breathing. His eyes slowly drifted shut, and soon his small hands relaxed against the blanket. When she finally stood up, Rowan met her in the hallway. His expression carried a softness she hadn't seen earlier, something deeper, steadier. "You handled that beautifully," he murmured. She shook her head. "I just wanted him to feel safe." "That's exactly why he trusts you," Rowan replied. They walked back toward the living room, though neither of them sat down right away. The weight of the night, its emotions, its confessions, its quiet tenderness, wrapped around them like a still, profound silence. Serafina turned toward him slowly. "Rowan, about what you said earlier." "You don't need to answer now," he interrupted gently, though his voice carried a quiet tremble. "I meant every word, but I don't want you to feel pressured. Not tonight." She hesitated, her fingers brushing lightly against each other as she searched for the right words. "I'm not running from your words," she said softly. "I'm just trying to understand why you see so much in me." Rowan exhaled, his voice low. "Because you make this place feel whole. You make people breathe easier. And you did the same to me without even trying." Heat rose behind her eyes, but she didn't look away this time. I haven't felt steady in a long while, she whispered. I didn't expect to find it here. Maybe that's how these things happen, Rowan said quietly. Quietly, naturally, when we're not looking for them. The truth of his words settled deep within her, settling the last fragments of fear she had carried. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating between them, but still wrapped in the softness and innocence the moment deserved. I'm not leaving, she said firmly, a gentle tremor in her voice. Not because I feel needed, not because I'm trying to prove anything, but because something here feels right, something I don't want to walk away from. Rowan's eyes softened, gratitude shining through them, quiet and full. Then stay, he whispered, not for responsibility, for yourself. Serafina breathed deeply, feeling the truth in her chest settle like a gentle dawning. She nodded slowly. I will. The night around them shifted, still delicate, still soft, but filled now with a quiet hope that neither of them had dared to name before. And as the house settled into peaceful silence, Serafina realized she had found something she didn't even know she had been searching for, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet corners of midnight moments where hearts speak without raising their voices.